So you've applied for a Scrum Master position and now you have an interview. Congratulations. Scrum Master interviews are not just about Agile terms. They are going to want to know how you can actually perform the job. Some of the questions may be tricky and can trip you up if you are not ready and/or prepared. As a safe practice consultant, a certified release trained engineer, certified safe Scrum Master, and a certified Scrum Master, not only have I done these particular roles, but I've also coached and interviewed candidates for a role such as this. Let's get something straight. Scrum Master interviews are designed to test you in two areas. First, to see if you understand the Agile principles, and secondly, to see if you can apply those principles in real-life situations. When you go through the interview process, you'll receive a mixture of questions. Some of the questions will be knowledge-based, other questions will be scenario-based, and you may even receive trick questions. The trick questions are to ensure that you understand the principles, but also the trick questions are also designed to see if you can think on your feet. Let's get started with these interview questions. Explain the role of a Scrum Master. I would answer the question this way. As a Scrum Master, my primary role is to be a servant leader. I remove all obstacles and impediments for the team. I facilitate Scrum events. I ensure that the team is following the Agile principles. I coach my teams on continuous improvement. I frequently partner with the product owner for backlog refinement sessions. But more than anything, I have been able to create an environment that fosters self-organizing teams as well as high-performing teams that deliver value. Question 2. How do you facilitate a sprint retrospective to ensure productivity? I would answer the question like this. In my experience, I have found sprint retrospectives to be productive when the event is sent out in advance and time boxed. When the team utilizes the start, stop, and continue method, giving the team an opportunity to talk about what we should start doing, stop doing, or continuing to do. To create an environment where the team is okay with being honest about those things that we should stop doing as well as start doing. Lastly, I capture any of the action items that the team has discussed, create a user story for that particular action item, and place it in the backlog to be prioritized. Question 3. What do you do if the product owner keeps adding work mid-sprint? Before I answer this question, let me say that product owners will add stories in the middle of a sprint. It is really and truly a real thing. But let me explain to you how I would answer this particular interview question. I've had product owners adding stories in the middle of the sprint before. I remind product owners that by adding stories in the middle of the sprint, you impact the team morale and the team velocity. I also try to have conversation with the product owner as well as the team to ensure that the work that's being added is feasible. I also want to make sure that the environment of adding these stories is collaborative and transparent for everybody that's involved. Now, when we have our sprint retrospectives, we discuss how can we avoid adding stories in the middle of the sprint going forward. Question 4. What would you do if your team is consistently missing sprint goals? I would answer the question like this. In my experience, when teams are not completing sprint goals, it's either because the stories are too large, there's scope creep, there's not a full understanding of the story for that particular sprint, or they've taken on too much work. As the Scrum Master, my responsibility is to go in to dive into the metrics and identify the reason why the team is not meeting the goal. Secondly, I go in and I communicate the reason to the team, display my results, and then identify finally a way for the team to successfully create goals that are obtainable by the end of the sprint. 5. How do you handle conflict between team members? I will use the STAR method to answer this next question. The STAR method is explaining the situation, the task, the action, and the results. My answer to this question will be this. Once I had a developer and a tech lead who began to argue and scream at each other during our daily stand-up. My task was to stop the stand-up meeting as quickly as I could. I took action by taking both of these gentlemen into a conference room to have a deep discussion. As we began to talk, what we found out was that the developer had a certain time expectation on the tech lead to approve his work so that he could continue to work on other stories. The tech lead had no idea that the developer had this level of expectation on him. As they began to talk calmer back and forth in this conference room about the expectation and negotiating on a time period, then we were able to resolve their issue. When we walked out of the room, the developer and the tech lead were pleased because both walked out knowing what the expectation was for each person to get their work done. You are not going to have a team where there's not any conflict at all. The key to resolving team conflict is to address it immediately, identify what the issue is, and come up with a resolution for both. As a Scrum Master, I remained neutral during this time period because what I wanted to do was to have the developer and the tech lead come up with a resolution, and they did.